What is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here, and welcome to the Nebula Music Podcast. This is a show where I talk to some of today's most inspiring and influential musicians with the goal of exploring their mindset. Today I'm excited because I have none other than Francesca Simone joining me on this interview. I am super honored because Francesca, man, she's an amazing musician, an amazing guitarist who's already played for some of today's biggest artists in the world. She's so young and she's already played for Beyonce, Kalani. I mean, the list goes on and on. But more importantly, I was blown away to find out more about the decisions that led up to her being able to pursue a career in pop music. Especially for her, she came from a jazz background. She made a complete 180 and essentially took a risk, and that risk paid off. And I was very excited and honored to be able to explore that and understand what drove her to those decisions and what continues to drive her in her music endeavors today. This is definitely a very special episode, so I don't want to waste any more time. Let's dive right into the interview. All right, what is up, everybody? I'm really excited today. I'm always excited every time I get a chance to talk to somebody amazing. I get excited that I get to do this for a living. I get to talk to really cool musicians that are just killing it in the game. And today is probably one of my top favorite musicians lately because, I mean, this girl is everywhere. Not only is she one of the most talented guitarists I've seen, or just musicians in general, she's absolutely killing it in music. And I mean, I see her everywhere. Every time I'm somewhere, she's there, she's doing it, she's killing it. I have Francesca Simone joining me on the show. Francesca, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I love your vibe. I love how excited and how happy you are. Because, you know, for the listeners, a little backstory, we actually had scheduled this interview just a couple, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Then because of all the bad things that are, the fires that were happening in the area, we had to postpone. But even though we came out of that tragedy just fine, Francesca, you seem so pumped and still full of life and ready to just fucking kill it. I love it, Francesca. I love your attitude.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Francesca, I don't like to waste time. I know I could, talk a lot, but I'd rather you do most of the talking. I'd like to maybe go ahead and ask you a little bit about your backstory. I mean, you can sort of tell me whatever you want, maybe how you got started in music, maybe where you're from, and we'll sort of take it from there.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for that introduction.
I try my best.
I'm from the Bay Area.
Oh, nice.
I was actually born in Manhattan, but when I was 6 weeks old, I moved to the Bay Area, so I don't remember much of New York. And I started playing piano, classical piano, when I was like 3 years old. And I started with the Suzuki method. And yeah, everything was very classical oriented. And when I went to 6th grade, I started kind of learning jazz on piano.
Nice.
But that was actually a really kind of difficult transition because I was so I was relying on, the score, sheet music so much. And then when I was about 11, my parents surprised me to take to a Santana concert. And we were sitting in the 8th row, and he came on stage and played this long sustained note, and I just started bawling. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, everybody was standing up and like cheering. I was like sitting in my chair, like sobbing. Everybody was like, is she okay? I'm like this little girl. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be up there with a guitar. And at that point in my life, I never touched a guitar. And I don't know. I just knew it. And so I told my parents, Mom, Dad, the only thing I want for Christmas is a guitar. And they got a guitar early for me. And I just started nerding out. And I was just always with my guitar. And
wow. That was 6th grade, you said, right? Like around 6th grade?
Yeah, that was around 6th grade. And
wow.
my mom told me, she actually took all my books, guitar books away. Because, I got some guitar books to try to help me learn guitar, and she just took them all away from me. And she's like, I mean, you learn piano that way, but I want you to learn guitar by ear. And so
really?
That was kind of the best thing that I could have she could have done for me, or I could have done for myself. And
dude, that's so strange. I've never heard of many parents doing that. Normally it's the opposite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, my mom's actually a musician. Well, she played piano for a really long time, but she was also classically trained. And so when she started playing jazz, it was like really hard for her. So she kind of had that insight and knew that, you know, if I was starting another instrument, that I should just do it kind of like from the soul instead, you know, as opposed to like reading and to kind of being told, you know, what to play.
Way to go, Mom.
Yeah, I know, right? So I just started transcribing like every single Santana song that I could get my hands on, and yeah, it was kind of my start to guitar.
How crazy is that? Isn't it so interesting how there's like one specific moment, at least for most musicians, I feel like most of us have one specific moment in our history that sort of determined when we picked up our instrument of choice, you know, so to speak. And for you, I feel like it stands out quite a bit. And I'm curious for you, like your style of playing guitar, basically. I always see you basically rocking out. No matter what you're doing, you're just, I mean, you're jamming, dude. Like you're rocking out, you're shredding, you're doing all sorts of things. I'm curious how you feel like you sort of came up with your style, because in a way it's unique. And I'm going to say this, I feel like in general, there aren't that many, at least at the time. I think now it's different, but at the time when you were growing up, there weren't that many, you know, girl guitarists that were killing it. Right. And this is something I've been talking about lately with a lot of my guests. It's changing, but you sort of found a way to create your own style out of that. I'm curious, how did you start sort of figuring out your own way? I know you said you started learning by ear, but I'm curious more in depth, like what did you do to figure out your style?
Well, it's interesting because when I started playing guitar, I had an Ibanez, and that was my first guitar.
The classic starter kits. I love it.
Yeah. It was perfect. And then, you know, I started like, again, like I had like 300 Santana songs on my iPod, and I was like obsessed, and, you know, learned all of them. And then people would come up to me after, you know, just meeting me or just hearing me play and say, hey, you sound like Santana. And at first I was like, yay, oh my God, I'm getting so much better. And then there was a point where I was like, you know what, I don't want to sound like him. Like I want to sound like Simone. Like I want to sound like myself. And so that's why my second guitar, instead of going with PRS, even though I loved their sound, I went with a Fender Strat. And
oh, nice!
I distinctly remember choosing that guitar because I was like, I don't want to be compared to him. And so then in high school, I started studying jazz really seriously, and I got in all the top like jazz Bay Area groups that there were, and I was just kind of like all day, every day, jazz. And so that I was studying like George Benson, Pat Martino, Pat Metheny, and so I think that definitely influenced my style, because I try to have a really good balance of like, I love melodies. Like that's something that like I've always grown up loving. I just love melodies and harmonies. And so in my playing, I try to make things very melodic, but also kind of, I try to tell a story with like either my solo or my songs. Like I try to make everything make sense musically. And because I'm like, theory is kind of like a second language to me. I sometimes it's kind of like also a curse because, you know, the more you get into something, the more there are like structures and rules, but I try to like let go of all of that stuff. You know? Yeah, exactly. And so I try to let go all that stuff when I'm creating and just kind of let things flow. And, so that's kind of,
how hard was it for you to find that balance, by the way? Because I'm on that same boat as you are, basically. There was a time where I was able to study a lot of theory and I learned a lot of that stuff. And it's very easy to get stuck in that realm. You know what I mean? The way things are quote unquote supposed to be. And then breaking away from that to find your own voice and finding that balance. How easy was it for you to find that?
Was actually extremely difficult because when I was in high school, I was so like immersed in this jazz scene. And to be honest with you, I didn't like it at all. It was like, like I'm glad that I went through it, because it taught me so much about music, and I was able to, you know, like really speak the language. But the culture of the jazz scene that I was in was just like really kind of like this negative energy, and kind of like, how fast can we play? Like kind of this competition. And it really got me down. And there was a point where I was like, you know what, I didn't play music to compete with people. You know, I play music because it's an expression of myself, and it makes my heart happy, you know, and I want to continue to do that. And so that I kind of decided that I didn't want to be a straight ahead jazz musician, because of this culture, which is kind of like sad to tell that story, but it's like,
no, I mean, it's a true story.
Yeah. And it actually, it was really hard, because then I went to Berkeley, and I kind of I tried to play a lot more like pop and funk, which is where I really found my, you know, joy. And then when I like started touring with music with different artists, I had to really get out of that kind of like bubble where it's like, it's all about the music, it's all about the notes. Like at that level, people don't really care about the notes. It's more about emoting, and like, how do you perform? And like people want to see, you know, the rock star, you know, they don't really care if you miss a note, you know? And so I kind of had to really get my head around that, and really realize that there's this whole other type of, and like, it's an entertaining, you know, it's like, it's a whole nother world that I was opened up to, and I fell in love with, because you know, just, you know, going on tour, it opened up my mind to the fact that there's so many different art forms, and when you put them together into a production, it's like the most incredible thing, you know, and then to present that to a whole audience, it's just like incredible.
You know, what's interesting about what you're saying is, what I like to do is, whenever I talk to somebody new, it's interesting for me to sort of put the dots together, because everybody's different. Everyone that comes through the show, everybody that I meet is different, and you can tell in the way that they play or the music that they make. And I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person many times, and I've seen you do your thing, and you are a bona fide rock star, like not just on stage, but your person. I mean, it's true. Your personality, you love that energy. You know what I mean? And it's interesting to me to know that at a certain point, you had to sort of decide whether or not you wanted to follow the traditional route. Let's just call it the traditional route, right? Which is what a lot of musicians recognize as. And then you had to figure out your own way, which is the performance side of things, and the pop scene, which I absolutely love. I love how explosive it all is. I'm curious for you, like, backtracking a little bit, we'll touch base a little bit on this later because I'm interested, but the jazz scene, right? Like, I come from the jazz scene too, and I've broke away from that for different reasons. But I'm curious for you, is the competition, what about the competition didn't you like? And the reason why I'm asking is because a lot of musicians thrive on that competition. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost necessary for anybody to become great. They sort of talk and preach about that competitive nature amongst other musicians, but you found your own way without it, or at least with a different kind of competition. You know what I mean? So I'm curious for you, what was it about that jazz competitive scene that you just didn't like?
I've never really been like a competitor, and that might actually sound weird. Because I know a lot of people who are like, you know, I'm only number one and all this stuff. But for me, it's like, I feel like there's so many different people on this planet, you know? And like, I feel like everybody should express themselves in any way, you know, to their fullest potential. And so, especially when I see like other females, I always want to support, and like, you know, like, if, especially in such a male dominated industry, like, you know, I mean, the music industry is very male dominated, but like, especially jazz, it's like so male dominated. And it's like, you know, that was hard for me because I worked my ass off to get into these, you know, different groups. And when I was in there, it's just like, I don't know, especially the women I felt were very, it wasn't even competition. I don't know what it was. It was just like, it didn't click, and you could actually hear it through the music. And so it, you know, and I feel like when I'm playing, I just want to, like, I want to make people feel good. You know, I think that's like for me, that's the whole point, is like relating to people and like communicate, you know, like through your art form, it's like expressing, you know, love, pain, hurt, or joy, or whatever it is, you know? And I feel like if you have this negative energy on stage, people can feel that. And so then what really is the point, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I think of competition, I'm always like, and I never really think of it like this, but I guess to like verbally communicate it, like I'm competing with myself, because it's like, you know, there's certain days where, you know, or a whole summer where I practiced like 12 hours a day, and it was just like, I just want to get better. I need to be better at my instrument, you know? And so it's like, I'm not really competing against other people. It's more just like, I need this for myself, because this is what I thrive on. This is what makes me happy, you know? And so, yeah, I really, for me, what makes me happy is like when people are at the top of their game, and we can all come together and make something new and create, you know? And I think there's a lot of this like beef sometimes, and sometimes it's not even the people. Sometimes it's like forces behind them or their life or like whatever it is. But like,
there's so many moving parts, you know?
Exactly. And you know, you never really know what it is, but it's just like, for me, I always, and from those experiences, I learned that I need to surround myself with like good people, people with good energy, people with creative ideas that want to express themselves. You know, it's just like, it's really important to preserve your energy in your space, because that is really sacred, because that's like where you need to feel safe, so that you can create, so that you can share with the world, you know?
Yeah. And I love that. And do you feel like, and again, maybe I'm just being sort of biased here, but I feel like you and I can relate because we've come from a very similar background. Do you feel like playing in this pop world that you're currently a part of, that I'm currently a part of, is it more freeing than being part of a traditional music realm? And I know it sounds weird to say, because in the jazz realm, I mean, the whole idea is that, you know, you learn all this stuff so that you can sort of break the rules in a way. But there's a sort of, like you were explaining, there's a sort of expectation that comes with being a part of that world. And so I'm curious, when you transition from that world to where you're currently at now, comparing them side to side, not saying one is better than the other, but for you, do you feel like it's more freeing for someone that has your personality and your vibe?
Definitely. I mean, to me, it was the best thing that I could have done for myself. And to me, it was incredibly freeing, because
Lay it on me. Tell it how it is. Tell it how it is. I don't care.
I mean, I think that, you know, I think that it, you know, I can see it from both sides. From the jazz world, like there was a point in my life where I actually said, like, man, pop is so easy. It's just 4 chords.
I was there too. I did that too.
Yeah. All you got to do is play those 4 chords and people get away with it and make millions of dollars and all this shit. And it's like, okay, well then I did, you know, somehow got out of that world and I went into this pop world, and it was like, I had to grow up. Like it was so intense. And because I jumped to kind of the highest level possible, and I was the youngest on Beyonce's team, it was a very, very, very steep learning curve for me. And I was like, wow, there's so much more to this than 4 chords. I mean, like I couldn't even believe that I was like in that mind space, you know? And so, and it was funny because I could feel the people in the jazz world kind of, I don't want to say like looking down on me, but kind of just being like, you know, well, she's going the easy route or whatever. And it's like,
You're selling out.
Right, exactly. And for me, I just needed to know for myself that like, this is what my heart is calling. And that to me, like, that is the one thing that like, if I feel like a gut, you know, intuition or anything, I will go for it. And whether it's, I don't know, quitting a job or like whatever it is, it's like, I'm going to do that and figure out the pieces later. And so that's what my heart was telling me. It's just like, you know, try this world, you know, experiment, explore. And like, it was just like the best thing I could have done. Cause then you realize, you know, how important entertaining is. And it's not just about being big and being, you know, all this stuff, but it's like
it's a different skill altogether. It's a completely different skill.
It's a whole nother skill. And honestly, it's like, I had to learn that it's not just about playing the notes, and it's not just about being creative, like, sonically. It's about how I, like, the pain that I felt. Like, for example, like my first solo with her was I Care. And you know that song, it's like a very, very emotional, like hurt, love, breakup, pain song, you know? And it's like, and I had to learn how to take the pain from my past and like put it into my guitar. And I think that was one of the biggest things I took away from that experience, was just like, you know, just because I'm playing guitar and it doesn't have, you know, words, it's like I can still, you know, be that person to connect with people, you know? And so, you know, and there's so many more things that go along with it, but yeah, I'm so glad that I am where I am now. And I took that risk to not go the traditional route, because, you know, I was applying to all these jazz colleges, and I ended up going to Berkeley, which is probably one of the best. Have all these different programs, which is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're blowing me away with your life experiences, and I love that you're very open about that. On a random side note, when you played that first solo, you said you had to pull from your emotions. And actually, tying back a little bit with what you were saying a little bit earlier, just because I want to sort of affirm what you were saying, you're absolutely right when it comes to transitioning to the pop world. I had to learn a similar lesson too. You know, coming from jazz, you sort of play a whole bunch of notes and blah, blah, blah as a drummer. And then transitioning from that to playing with a singer-songwriter to only playing the absolute basics, but playing the hell out of those basics,
right? Yeah,
completely changed my life, and it made me mature musically. It made me really understand what to play and when to play and how to play it, as opposed to just, you know, playing a million notes fast. And this is something that it's not new. I'm sure tons of people talk about it, but it's important to note that that's that growing up process. I personally think it happens in the environments that you chose to be in. But here's what I'm interested about. You said that in your first solo, obviously it was a big deal for you to be a part of Beyonce's team and to play that first solo. What did you think about to play that first emotional solo? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask, but you said you had to draw some pain. I'm just curious. I'm curious like what it was, because you probably were a little bit nervous, not super nervous, but a little bit. So you had to draw it from somewhere. And I'm curious what that somewhere was.
You know,
if I can ask, I'm not sure if I'm allowed. You can tell me no.
I mean, let's see. Hold on. Let me think about this for a second.
You have to think about these things sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of had to think about where I was pulling that emotion from. And it had to be something that I could feel so deeply, so, you know, that I could communicate through this instrument. And to be honest, and this is something like very, you know, personal to me, but like I was kind of like, I never really fit in school. Like I was always the odd one out, and, you know, I was, you know, people made fun of me and all this kind of stuff. And that also carried into the jazz world. Yeah. And so, and I don't know if it was always something like I was a little bit different or like whatever it was, but there was a whole bunch of pain that I kind of, what's the word? Kind of like blocked in. Cause of course I didn't, you know, I was trying to be strong and like, you know, not pretend like it didn't get to me, but like a lot, like it was just a lot of buildup. And then kind of when I left the jazz world was kind of my first decision for myself to say, you know, I don't care what anybody says, what anybody thinks, like I need to do what's right for me, because that's the only way that I'm going to be happy. And so that's where I kind of like shifted and kind of isolated myself.
Yeah.
And realized that the things that make me different are actually the
things. What make you special.
Exactly. And instead of that being something that people laugh at or whatever it is, it's like, nah, like that's what makes me unique. And like, this is why I'm cool, you know? And like, hopefully one day I can inspire people to just be themselves, because, you know, I mean, like if I had tried to like fit in, then I wouldn't be where I am today. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like there was a lot of pain that came with that. Yeah. And so with that solo up to that point, because I joined when I was like 19.
You were really young, yeah.
I was really young, so I'm like trying to pull from experiences that I had had.
I feel like you're probably the youngest musician ever to play at that caliber so quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you broke records.
Oh my God, yeah. Now that you say that, I probably did.
You gotta look that up. You probably did.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but I mean, I had to pull. I mean, that was probably. I definitely remember pulling from that place and just being like, well, now I'm here and now I have to figure out how to put it into this solo, you know?
Yeah.
Which is like a very iconic solo, you know?
But it is. It defines your career in a way. You know what I mean? I appreciate you being honest with me, because I know it can't be easy sometimes to... No, I mean, it's true. It's true. It's hard for me. I mean, I do this every week, and sometimes it's hard for me to even say what I think about. But it's something that we forget about when we're doing what we're passionate about, be it music or anything else. There's some sort of part of you that goes along with it. And what I find interesting about you is you didn't fit in. And to me now, looking back, it's very clear why you didn't fit in. It's almost like destiny, you know, but at the time, it's never easy to see why when you're in the thick of it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure you can attest to that. I'm curious, and I don't mean to pry even more,
it's cool.
But like, what was it about you that you feel didn't fit in with the rest of the musicians you were part of? And has that gone away now? Do you feel like you finally found your place amongst other musicians?
Yeah.
And feel free to be honest, or tell me, like, you know what, I don't want to answer
I'm
that.
just thinking, because I've never really fit in like in even school where people weren't musicians. I think that, well, especially with my playing in the jazz community, I was always a very melodic player, and that wasn't really an asset. Like, people didn't really see that as maybe like a good thing, you know? But that's just like how I've always played.
I find that odd, because there's so many great jazz examples that are all about the melody. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But that's what, I mean, we could get into a whole conversation. I feel like that's how jazz has changed, though, because I feel like when jazz started, it was an emotional thing. It was a very melodic thing. Like, you know, people were like pouring their souls into it. But now, because it's become such an institutionalized, you know, you have to go to school, you have to get a degree, you have to, you know, like, here are the notes you have to play. If you don't play these notes, then you're wrong. You get graded on it. And like, jazz was never supposed to be like that, you know? And so, I think that, like, especially when I was in these groups, I practiced like super hard, and I was always practicing my technical, part of it. And everybody, you know, not all the teachers, but like a lot of teachers were like, you know, you need to work on your technique, because you're just not playing fast enough, or like whatever it was. And, you know, we would start out like a Just Friends song, and it would be at like 300 BPM. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what the heck? And of course, like, I'm a female, and, you know, being a part of that, it's like, then it feels like you have this whole like stress that I didn't even ask to be a part of. It's like, I'm just trying to be better. I'm trying to learn. But along with that, like, here I am, I'm like I'm a woman of color, and like, I can't keep up. And that in itself is just like a whole like
a whole another can of worms, dude.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, that's why women can't play. And it's like, no, that's not true. It's like, you guys just aren't looking in the right places, because like, I know that I have something special, but you guys aren't realizing that. And so but I didn't realize that then, you know, of course I was like really upset, because I felt like I was always being picked on. And so in terms of like the musician community, at that point in my life, I think maybe that's probably why I didn't fit in, is because I had such a unique sound that like wasn't like the typical way of like playing jazz, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
And then in terms of just like school, I don't know. I was so out of it. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I was like doing air guitar solos on the middle of the freaking field, and people are like, what the fuck are you doing?
As you should. Come on.
I'm like, yo, like, you guys think I'm crazy, but like, one day you'll understand. And now, of course, like, everybody's hitting me up. I'm like, Yeah, remember when you didn't talk to me?
Oh, you have those saved up and you dish them back. I like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that what was your last question? Because you had
I was just curious. So
yeah,
so you explained that how you didn't fit in back then. I'm curious if you feel like now you found a new group of musicians, that fit you better.
I learned, and I would say this to anybody who feels like they just, can't seem to fit in or whatever it is like, the more you are true to yourself and the more you, like, as awkward, as weird as it may feel, like, it's so important to just, like, be yourself and do the things that you love and figure out, like, how to express yourself in everyday manners, because those are the little things that attract the right people to you.
Yeah.
And instead of, like, trying to fit in with this group of people that maybe wants to reject you, it's like, no, you know what? Maybe I'll be isolated for a little bit, but if I continue to be myself, I will attract the right people. And, I mean, of course, people come in and out of your life, but I, like, especially like right now, I feel like I have a really, really solid group of people around me that I'm just, like, so thankful for every day, So
yeah.
I have, some super close friends and a great team. And I think that really just came from having the courage to just be myself. And I know that sounds cheesy, but, like, it's really
but it's cheesy because it's true. That's true for all those cheesy sayings. We hear them all the time, and we hear them from the wisest people alive or not alive. But once you experience them, you realize that they're true. They're super simple. And I love that you're saying this, and thank you for being honest about it, because it's something I try to do my best with anybody that listens to the show or anybody who's trying to make a name for themselves. It's okay to be anything you want to be, right? I mean, some people like following what the rules are, and that's perfectly fine. But I think the idea is we all have to spend time with ourselves to figure out who we are at some point, and some of us figure it out earlier than others. You have figured it out. I mean, extremely well.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit longer than you, I would imagine, to figure out who I was. And I feel like I'm still figuring it out. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I feel like I'm going to be 85 years old and I still won't know what the hell's going on inside this brain. But the idea being is that you're right. You made the choice to sort of step into the unknown in a way. And
definitely.
Yeah, and embrace yourself. Do you feel like that choice to sort of embrace who you are and step out into the unknown and leave something so familiar like the jazz world, the schooling and all that, was that a choice that you sort of woke up one day and were like, hey, this needs to happen? Or was it a very gradual, like, it took a couple months and then it sort of happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow, I've never had an interview where we got so deep. Like, I love this. It's just like,
I'm happy. This is what drives me, dude. Honestly, look, honestly, between me and you, like, I get so bored of and again, there's a place for everything, but I'm not someone who likes to talk about gear and theory. I'd much rather get to know who you are and what makes you tick.
I love this.
I mean?
I love this. I'm so glad you're asking me these questions. It's just, I'm digging deep. It happened in 11th grade. I was a part of this specific jazz group, and it was just so, I was just keeping so much in, and I was just carrying a load. And I was, trying to be the best that I could. But, if you keep walking into a place that you're supposed to love and keep being shut down, like, why are you here? What are you doing here? Like, and that just, like, really, like, to this day, I still, like, have certain things that are, like, almost ingrained in me. And I'm like, no, snap out of it. Like, this is not, like, you were taught this isn't who you are. And so I'm still unlearning some of those things, especially in high school when you're so prone to everything that happens around you. You take everything in, you're trying to figure out who you are. It's like a really important time. And so for that to happen, that was like it really hurt me. And so I kind of, like, manifested it physically, and I had this, like, infection in my body that the doctors to this day still don't know why I got it. And
really?
Yeah, and I had to have surgery, and they removed this infection, and I I remember like I woke up from my surgery and I just remember like thinking to myself, this is not okay. Like, I can't let shit like this get to me. Like, the fact that they don't know where this infection came from, like, to me, that was just a symbolically, that was just representing, like, I need to be good to myself and I need to make sure that I'm around good energy, because I'm a very, like, spiritually sensitive person. So I take in my surroundings, and I take in, like, you know, everything that's around me. And so to take in that and really believe that I like wasn't good, or like whatever what I was taking in, I just told myself never again. And to this day, like, I won't work with people that have bad, like, I don't care how famous you are, how rich you are. I don't care about any of that. If you don't have a good, like, energy about you, I can't work with you. And that's just kind of like been a rule for me since that time. And so, yeah, I'm just like, that was kind of the defining moment where I was like, you know what? No, I need to be good to myself. Yeah.
I mean, no, dude, thank you for saying that. I mean, thank you for opening up about that. I had no idea, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm ever talking about any of this. I mean, I'm glad I'm opening up, but
I mean, to me, it's a very important moment in your life. And here's the thing, we can go around in circles about this sort of thing, but like the idea is that what I'm fascinated about with you right now is that I relate to so many of the things that you're talking about. And it's so interesting how you found a way to make a positive out of a negative, because I know plenty of people that did not do that. You know, like they sort of went through similar situations. They knew that they were different, but they also wanted to belong, like we all do. And the negativity sort of, you know, got them down. It got to them and beat them, and they became what they did not want to become. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that for you, I mean, I don't want to say it this way, because I'm not so sure if anything in life is meant to be, but I do think that some of the experiences that happen in life can contribute to your life either positively or negatively. And you chose to basically see this event in your life as a, you know what, I need to take responsibility for my happiness. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, honest to God, I'm curious, had this event not happened, had this not happened to you, what do you think would have happened to your career, or like just your life?
I think that I would probably still be playing jazz. And I would probably be on that, journey. I mean, but then you never know. 'Cause then that gets into the question of like, what's fate, you know, like, and then
this became very philosophical really quickly.
Right. I mean, but it's true. It's like, if that hadn't happened to me, maybe there was another situation that would have happened to me and I would have ended up in the same place, or maybe I wouldn't have ended up in the same place at all. You know, you never know. You never know.
But the idea is that all that matters is what you did and what you're doing today. And you chose to do you chose to basically not accept anything else other than what makes you feel happy. And at the time you chose to step away or to, you know, do something different. And honestly, that's something I would love to nail into the coffin for everyone who's listening and other people that I meet all the time, is that it's important, these life moments, or even if no life moment happened, it's, you know, what makes you happy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it's a weird thing that all humans have, but we all sort of know where we need to go. Even if we're not there yet, we sort of know. And it's kind of up to us to choose that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think getting philosophical, but
I mean, you're the prime example, man. You're the prime example.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that we all have some sort of calling, you know, we have something that we're all here, we're meant to do. And we have this society where it's like in order to be quote unquote successful, you have to go through these steps and you have to finish school and then you go to college, and then you get a degree and then you go to whatever you do and then you go to your like 9-to-5 job and then you know, come home, and it's just like, I feel like sometimes it's easy to get locked into that. And I mean, some people, they are really doing what they love within that. But I think there are a lot of people that are clinging on to that because there's no other way. And if they wanted to do something like be an artist or create or be a dancer, like whatever it is, it's like they don't have the time to do that because they're in this kind of like system. And I feel like it's really important to just like, if, you know, you only have one life. So if you find something that you're really passionate about, you know, go for it with full force and just like do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. I do love everything you're saying because I do believe that every single one of us has a purpose. And I think that could be explained in many different ways. But the truth is, I think as long as you're sort of willing to listen, and here's where the figuring yourself out comes into play. It's because we do live in an environment as musicians, as artists, as just people, as part of a society, we do live in a way where we're kind of sort of told how to be and what's acceptable and what makes you happy, quote unquote. And it's kind of up to us to sort of, you know, make ourselves happy. And you somehow found a way. I mean, at this point, what haven't you done? You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
There's still stuff I want to do.
I'm sure that there's tons of stuff that we're all going to do. And I'm sure that you're going to do things. We could spend so much time talking about this stuff. And I love that we did. And I want to just get to know a little bit more. Like, I'm curious about this specifically because we've learned that you made the choice to follow your dreams. You made the choice to find your own happiness. What happened when you were presented with this amazing opportunity to play for arguably the best artist in our generation, Beyonce? You were basically blessed with this opportunity. And to be honest with you, I probably would have freaked out and probably not accepted it because I would have been afraid. But you pushed forward, man, like a train. You were just like, I need this. I want this. Like what, like, how did it happen? Can I ask you that? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah. So basically after my second year of going to college, Berklee College of Music, I kind of decided that I couldn't learn the real industry, like the real world, like sitting in a classroom. And I know there's different ways to think about it.
Sure. But this is like, your way. This is your way.
Well, yeah, where I was during that period of my life, I just felt like I just wanted something more. And I didn't know what that was, but I'd always wanted to move to LA. So
best city in the world, guys.
Right. So I moved. After my second year, I went to LA and I lived on my cousin's couch for like 3 months. And I decided that because while I was at Berklee, I wanted to delve into singing more and songwriting more. And I felt like because people already knew me as a guitarist, everybody asked me to play, hey, can you play guitar for this? Can you play guitar for that? And with homework and all my classes and everything, it was really difficult to dedicate time for myself to practice my singing and practice my songwriting, and which is really what I wanted to go into more. And so that's why I said, you know what, I'm going to give myself the time to do that. I'm going to move to LA and figure it out. And so I went and shout out to Brian for having me on his couch for like 4 months. You're awesome, Brian. Right. And so I was there for like 3 or 4 months and I got really depressed because it's like really hard to be in a city, especially LA, and immerse yourself in like an industry where it's very like, you know, who you know, and like, you know, and especially because I was coming in and saying, hey guys, I'm an artist. And people were like, yeah. Like, okay, next, you know, and I only knew one person coming out to LA, and he went to Berklee too. And so, you know, I was around, you know, his friends and everything, but it was still really difficult because I felt like people weren't seeing me as like who I wanted to be and who I felt like I was supposed to be. And so I just really got really down. And then I decided I'm going to go visit my mom because my mom moved to DC when I moved to Boston. So I was like, you know, I'm going to go visit my mom and her family and let everything go. Like, I just don't want to, I'm not going to think about music. I'm not going to think about anything. I'm just going to let go and spend time with family. And the day that I got out there is when I got the call to audition basically. And so I told the music director that I didn't have any of my stuff. And
Was it in DC?
No, it wasn't. It was I was giving, like, recording a tape. And so I just didn't have any of my gear. So I basically took another red eye back out to LA and recorded the video. And then I didn't really have time to think. They just then we ended up doing the Made in America show and Global Citizen. Those were my first two shows. So yeah.
Wow, dude. How impressive. How interesting how life can change like that in an instant. And here's what I love about your part of the story, that I find similarities in people's different stories. And what you did right was you mentioned that you sort of let things go. And this is something I don't feel is talked about enough, because especially in this day and age, we do live in a society where people are, sort of trapped in a cycle. But at the same time, there's also this other side, which I was a part of for a little while, of like rising entrepreneurs and hustlers and that sort of idea that, if you want something really badly, you got to work incredibly hard and do all this bunch of shit, which is true. It's absolutely true. But here's the thing. When you said let go, personally, I feel like a lot of the magic in life happens in those moments. Because look, like we've been saying this whole entire conversation, we can talk about this for hours, but there's so many moving parts in life and society and your friends and you and your life that so many things can happen, but we're so focused on the way things should be that sometimes it takes those moments where you just sort of let go of the handlebars and let's see what happens, that things out of nowhere happen. And maybe that's because they were already there. You just weren't seeing it. I don't know. Who knows?
Right.
But there's so many musicians just like you, Francesca, that have told me the exact same thing, that they tried they went to school, they were in this band, they moved to other cities, and they were depressed. And one day they were like, you know what? I'm going to go spend time with family and let's see what happens. And then it just works out. You know what I mean? And I think you did it right. Obviously, there's so many moving parts, but did that sort of help you get to where you are today?
Definitely. I mean, I think that letting go is an incredibly huge part to anything. I think there's a lot of like my journey and kind of like the way I think about things is very kind of not tangible. It's like I'm kind of crazy and I dream a lot and I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna quit this job and see what happens, and
it makes life interesting though.
It makes life very interesting and scary at some points, but it's like instead of having like a stable life, it's like you have really low lows and you have really, really high highs. And so I'm consciously choosing to kind of live like that, where, it can be really scary, but then it can be also the most rewarding like moments, And so, I think that I'm glad to see my life pan out like that. And it's only taught me that, for me, like meditation is like really important because that's kind of like where you can let go and really not think about anything. And there's this actually new kind of like meditation that I've been doing. It's just like the blank slate meditation where you literally just don't think. It's like you're not happy, you're not sad, you just are, and it's just like nothing.
Do you just focus on your breathing?
Yeah. Well, there's certain meditations where you can focus on your breathing. I guess this could also be a part of that. But I don't know. It's just like, I don't like, when you close your eyes and you kind of see shapes and stuff moving, like, it's just like clear all of that. And like, if a thought pops into your head, just like erase it and just don't think. And I think honestly, just by doing that for a few days, like you see the impact. You're just like, I don't know. It's just like something about something that we don't know about. It like somehow works out. And like, it's crazy to see how like, there's just so many distractions in this world with like social media and, people and everything, your daily tasks and like what you have to do and like, what you have to do to like live and then what you want to do on the side. And then sometimes you just get so like
caught up in those things.
Yeah, caught up. And then when you take a step back and realize like, hey, I'm alive. Like I'm breathing. Like I just like, I'm dope just by being alive like that. And then when you kind of shift your perspective to that, you realize like everything just like falls into place, as opposed to like trying to push things. And I am like one of those people, like I have tried to push things so far and like it never goes anywhere. And it's just like the most frustrating thing. But I always try to remind myself to just like let go, because I feel like so many things happen when you just like let go and just let like whatever's supposed to happen. You know, sometimes you get in the way of yourself.
Yeah. That's very important. Thank you for bringing that up. And you know what's interesting is I think we might be doing a lot of the same things. I'm a huge advocate for meditation, and I've done that. I've been doing that for the past couple of years, and journaling as well. I love journaling.
Yeah, I need to start journaling more.
I mean, I do it like once or twice a week. It's super important. But I think the idea of meditation that a lot of people sort of overlook, especially the ones that don't do it, is that when you meditate, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's an hour, whatever it is for you, for me at least, what it helps me understand is that everything that I'm going through is really not that big of a deal. Like I could literally be facing a lot of challenges. I could have a deadline due. I could be interviewing someone really, really huge like you, for example, and be nervous about it or whatever. You know what I mean? But the idea being is that when you sort of take the moment to meditate, even if it's not meditation, if you take the moment to sort of just take a step back, just breathe, clear your mind, you, in a weird way, I think you see your place in the world and you see how insignificant you are, but at the same time, how significant you are for yourself, and how nothing that's facing you is detrimental. You know, at least for us, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's other people that are facing other issues, but the idea being is that everything in a way you can deal with. You know, when you think about it that way and you're sort of able to relax and clear your head. And I love that. I love that you are approaching life that way, because it shows. Clearly it shows.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank you.
You play for Beyonce. You've also played, I think it's Kehlani, right? Is that who else?
Yeah, Kehlani.
Kehlani, yeah. How is that, by the way? How do you enjoy playing for Kehlani?
I love it. She's an amazing human, and we're both from the Bay. We're the same age. It's just like...
Are you guys from Oakland, or where are you guys from?
Well, I think she's from Oakland, but I'm from Hayward, but I went to school in Oakland and Lafayette. So it's kind of like all over the Bay Area, but, yeah, we're both from the Bay. And yeah, it's like always a party every time I'm with the team. It's like awesome.
That's the dream come true when your job is a party. And I love that. I mean, I love that. I love that when you get to have fun, and that's the rewards of sort of living your life in a very unplanned, very sort of free-form way.
Unconventional.
It gets scary, but it gets fun sometimes. And so what is next for you then? Obviously, you're a superstar. You're killing it in the music game. I know that you're working on your own music. So I'm curious for you, like what, you know, other than doing what you're currently doing now, like what's next on the horizon, or what would you like to be next for you on the horizon?
Yeah, I am working on music, and I hope to release some sort of project next year at some point. It's still in the works, but I've just been working on kind of like discovering like who I am and like what's my sound, and realizing that, you know, as an artist, I think it's more than just like having songs and singing and playing. Again, it comes back to that emoting thing. It's like, you know, I need to be open and honest and vulnerable about like my experiences, kind of like I'm doing now. It's like I need to realize that like it's not just about the music. It's about how I express myself and how I can connect with people, because that I think is the responsibility of any kind of artist is to you know, share your experiences through your art, and through that people can connect and hopefully not feel so alone, or hopefully feel more inspired to do what they need to do or want to do but don't have the courage to, or like whatever it is. And so I kind of take that upon myself as like, to be an artist, this is my responsibility. And so I've been kind of taking time to myself to figure out like what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what my fears are, and how to overcome them, and trying to put all that into music. And so it's just kind of been it's been a journey, and so I feel closer and closer every day, and
that's how it feels.
I mean, it's not like one point that I'm trying to get to, but in terms of just like coming into myself as an artist, like I feel like it's a beautiful process, and I can't wait to share what I've been working on.
I can't wait to hear it. I'm curious for you. Is it hard switching back and forth between, you know, experimenting with yourself as an artist and then the other projects that you're currently on? Like, is it hard switching back and forth, like the mindsets of playing on this tour and then coming back home and then trying to figure out your musicality for your songs? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is actually really, it's difficult, which is why I eventually just want to be, making music. That's my goal.
That's the dream right there, man. Making your own music.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that. I think that my path is very unique and very special because I had the opportunity to experience what it was like to put a production, to any kind of production together. And I think that only gave me like just loads and loads of inspiration, to figure out like, what does Simone sound like through music, through dance, through, film, and through, just there's so many different components of a show. And that's honestly what I'm just like super psyched about. And, like incorporating the guitar into a performance. And
we need more of that, man.
I think guitar's kind of like died out. Yeah. And I feel like history always repeats itself. So I feel like this is a time for guitar to come back. And I feel like
it is though, isn't it?
Yeah,
like it's starting to make a little bit of a comeback.
It's making a comeback. And I feel like there's a part of guitar that actually hasn't been tapped into. You think about guitars and you think about like rock stars, like rock stars just shredding, and I think there's a part of guitar that hasn't been tapped into, which is this really like soft feminine side. And it's like, how do we as females can we tap into that? I mean, the spectrum is so broad, but I'm saying just like, I think that there's a part of that that hasn't been tapped into, and maybe I'm still trying to figure this out, but like maybe there's a part of, what I was doing, playing so melodically and with so much soul, in my early phases of my, music career. And maybe what they were seeing was something that just hadn't been done before, by a female. And so I'm just learning how to kind of like embrace that and make it into a strength and like show people that like, hey, this hasn't been done before, or like listen to this part of it. And I'm just glad that there's so many more female, not only guitarists, but like instrumentalists that are coming out and saying, hey, we can play. And it's not just about competing. It's not like, hey, we play better than the guys or just as good as the guys. It's like, hey, we bring a whole nother element to playing that you guys have never heard. And I think that's the most exciting part about it.
Yeah. I actually talked about this a couple of weeks ago with another one of my guests, and I'm curious what you think. Do you feel like, as a whole, is the music industry starting to accept women as equal players? Because here's the thing, and you can disagree with me if you want, but I speak from experience from some of the people that I've worked with, and unfortunately, I have heard a lot of negative stuff in the past. But what the consensus that I gathered is that a lot of people, a lot of guys specifically, see girls as obviously talented, but more of like I don't want to say gimmick, but you get what I'm trying to say? Like the girl guitarist, it's like a rarity, and it's kind of like here comes a girl who plays guitar. Do you ever feel like it? Do you feel like it's finally starting to balance out, and that maybe one day, very soon, it's going to get to a point where we won't have to separate those lines, where we can finally see both women and men being treated exactly the same for their talent? Does that make sense?
I hope that day does come, and I hope it comes soon. And I think that while it's I think there are different sides to it. I think that while the whole gimmicky girl guitar playing thing, I could understand how guys could talk about it, but just kind of like I was quote unquote selling out by going against the grain of like the jazz community. I feel like that was kind of gimmicky within that culture,
That's true.
And I feel like with women, it's like women need to step up to the plate and say, hey, we got this. Like, we practiced our asses off. We sat there, we did the work. And when we've done the work, then there's nothing you can say to us because we've done the work, And so I feel like just like, women are stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, we play really, really great, And I think I hope that there comes a point where people can just express themselves however they can, and it's accepted if it's coming from your soul. Like, I know that sounds very like ethereal and like whatever, but like I really just hope that like people can be able to express themselves, women or men or whoever, and be that voice for anybody, you know? And I think we're getting to a place where at least there's some more respect for female musicians, but you know, I'm sure that it will exponentially grow in the next few years or whatever. But yeah.
I mean, I think it's coming, to be honest with you, because there's so many. Every day, I feel like I'm on social media and I'm seeing another girl just kill it, you know, in music
it's so
in general.
cool, especially
and I love
with social
that.
media.
I mean, that's the way it should be. I think. I mean, maybe it's just because it's our generation. We're kind of the first generation to have both the old analog world and then the new sort of digital world. We can you and I can sort of attest to how it used to be, you know, growing up. And now I kind of feel happy that a lot of these younger kids are sort of growing up, being able to see a wider spectrum of both women and men sort of achieving the same thing. And I love that. And that's the way it should be. And
that's the way it should be. Yeah.
And
it'll definitely change.
Yeah.
I think because this generation is growing up seeing that with social media and everything, they're not thinking of it in terms of women and men. They're thinking of it, yo, that's a really badass player. And I think that this next generation is really key and is really instrumental in changing the path that, you know, that mentality of separation.
Yeah. Man, Francesca, I love talking to you. Thank you so much for being so open. You're absolutely amazing at everything that you do. You're an amazing guitarist, amazing artist. Your song, I mean, you're just fucking killing it. And I say that, I mean that with a sincere heart. There's so many things that we could honestly talk about, but I know your time is valuable, and I feel so honored that you came on the show and talked about your life. And frankly, there's a million things I could ask you, but I honestly think you said everything you needed to say. And the truth is, honestly, I don't even know what to say. I'm just like, exactly, Francesca. This is exactly who I thought you would be, and I'm glad that you proved me right.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Francesca. I know that I definitely did. And at the end of every episode, I always say this: I'm always learning. And that's something I want to make sure that I get across to you guys. And Francesca, man, I'm blown away by her story. There was a lot of things that I connected with, but one of the major things that I want to make sure that you guys take away from this episode is definitely Francesca's choices that she made. It's easy for us to look at someone like her, look at her story, look at her life, pinpoint all the choices she made, and tell ourselves, yeah, obviously each one was the perfect choice. But as we all know, sometimes we can't see the outcome of specific choices that we make. It's a very scary thing, especially when you're trying to pursue something that matters to you. It's hard to make choices. But the one thing I want to make sure I take away, Francesca was very confident in what she believed in. She knew that the world she was part of, the musical world that she was part of at the moment, just wasn't the one for her. Even though it made sense on paper, even if all her friends, maybe even other people, thought that she was on the right track, she knew she wasn't. And she had to listen to her gut and make choices that ultimately led her to the success that she's experiencing today. No one can make the decisions that you have to make. Even if it makes sense on paper, if you feel like a current path that you're taking isn't the right path, change it. It's all up to you. And I want to encourage that to you. It's going to be scary. It's going to be risky. But at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that we all know what's best for us. And I guarantee you, if you have confidence in yourself and you have confidence in the choices that you're willing to make, one way or another, you're going to find success and find yourself exactly where you need to be. And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, definitely consider subscribing to the podcast. I'm on Apple, Google, Anchor FM. The show is featured on there. I'm basically anywhere that you can find podcasts. I do this as much as I possibly can. I bring on the best musicians I can find, people that are absolutely killing it in the industry, because I want to share that experience with you guys so that you can see that there's more than one way to succeed. And that makes me happy. I want to make sure that I always inspire you, give you so many different points of reference, give you so many different examples of success, because I firmly believe that if you find your own unique path, you will definitely find your way to success.